Good evening. For the council meeting this evening, we do have a council informational with Wendy Berry and her co-partner, Deb. Hawaii Mathiasen. How you been? Long time. Okay, so the microphone is yours.
Great. Let me know that you can hear me okay?
I hope so.
Yeah? Does that work?
Yeah.
Great. Yes, you can hear me? Yes. Okay. Great. So everybody, thank you for the time for me to allow to give an update on where we are with the ARPA for Arts and Culture. I'm going to walk you have a nice, lengthy, chunky 58-page report that you all received in advance, hopefully to make sure that anything I can't cover tonight, you have access to the information. I'm going to just go over some of the highlights. I'm going to try to go through it fairly, decent speed. I know we've got 30 minutes, and then have any time for questions that you all may have for me. I have my assistant director here also, Deb Mathiasen, part of our team that's also not here, but just want to give a thanks and a shout out to Sarvani Hazra, who's not here, and Kia Baird, and Jessica Morazovich. They're part of the Culture Coalition team. I'm going to go through three kind of larger areas in terms of status. One is our grants update on where we are in terms of distributing grants. The second part is the Norwich Public Art Committee, an update, and then the exploration of Norwich Cultural District. This really is the place where we just kind of need some feedback or questions on if there's interest in moving forward with exploring a cultural district, and we would keep going, but we wanted to give you back the results of the first phase of exploration. So with that, this is just a reminder of what you all blessed as $500,000 allocation, and this was in September of 2021. This report that you have received and what I'm talking about is only about that first $500,000. This doesn't even talk about the second allocation in January of this year. Hard to read, and I apologize, but if anybody here wants a copy, there's extra copies right up here of the whole report. This is just a synopsis of where we are in terms of the funding, in terms of actual budget and projected. So the $500,000 allocation, originally we had budgeted $300,000 for grants, $100,000 for arts and cultural kind of programs and projects, and then a total of $100,000 for both the coordinator and an administrative fee for our organization. On the actuals, you can see that we have thus far expended about $151,000. We have $258 that is kind of in process right now. The checks have not gone out for the second round. And then we have remaining funds of $89, which you can see where those remaining funds will go, but all totaling up in our projected final. So you can see that the budget to projected final for grants, we have determined that we would go over in grants and under in another area because we found that there was more need, more applications than we expected, and more money that we wanted to get out into community programs. And so while we're over in terms of where we want to spend more money in grants, we are under in other areas, including our coordinator and the money that we put aside for administration for that coordinator position, and then coming in at half as much for the arts and cultural programs and projects. There is a detailed page 4 that has the breakdown of each one of these of what we've expended so far, and I can answer questions at the end. In terms of our kind of just overview of summary, we have done 3 grant programs thus far. We did the first round, those were only small grants up to $10,000. That's kind of our round 1 ARPA for Arts and Culture. And then we just recently completed the round 2, which consisted of 2 grant programs, the exact same first program, the small up to $10,000 Norwich ARPA Arts and Culture grant, and then a newer grant called the Impact Grant was up to $25,000. Those were announced at the same time, they were open at the same time, and they were decided at the same time. So in total, we had $587,000 in requests across all 3 lines over the past year. We've awarded $308,000, 159, 31 total grants. And just wanted to make a note that while we are featuring and highlighting some of the grants from last year, the round 1, in terms of some of the impact, all of the final grant reports from last year's round 1 are not even due until June 30th. So we don't have the full grant reports even yet to pull out kind of the real impact of where those dollars all went, jobs and things like that. We'll be able to do that after June 30th. The round 2 grants, the impact and small grants, those are money for this calendar year, and the grant report will be due next year. So just know that it takes time to get our grant reports, have them actually do their projects, implement the programs, and then send us information on it. We just wanted to give you a little bit of information information about kind of how our process works. We work along kind of national best practices and standards. We have a grant review committee. Our applications are reviewed, they're scored. We use a rubric. That rubric is available to all applicants so they know what we're scoring them on different categories. Our recommendations are based on an average total score. We do provide in rounds an additional small amount of points for BIPOC applicants, which was technically an underserved community that we wanted to try to make sure that we were thinking about how best we can fund first-time applicants and BIPOC applicants. And then round one, we're awarded at total funding levels, meaning all or nothing. And what we found was a lot of applicants did small amounts, various amounts, and so they thoughtfully considered what kind of money they really needed in that, because it was an all or nothing. The second round was partial, which means we could give them all or nothing, or somewhere in the middle, and everybody went for the full max on all grants, right? And that's kind of typical, but it was a little surprising. Same thing for the impact grants. The impact grants are the larger grants, that up to $25,000. They required at least 2 partners, so a total of 3 entities that had to partner on it. We scored on 12 different elements, and then we had an additional, because of the larger grants, we had an additional kind of advisory group that we ran through all of our recommendations and said, hey, any red flags here, anything we should know, some of these people we don't know. So we ran it through an additional kind of layer of an advisory group. This was our analysis in terms of just some interesting takeaways, and thanks to Deb for her amazing work on giving us all the data and analysis of everything we found. On the smaller grants for up to $10,000, we basically had the same number of applicants between round 1 and round 2, about a year apart. The total number of individual artist applicants increased, with individual artists being a primary category of who we were funding, and 55% of the applications were from first time, so they'd never written a grant before in their life, which is exciting for us because we wanted to see the money go to places that it hasn't traditionally gone to, and that went up from 11 of 20. I don't want to go through all these in terms of, you can see kind of some of the changes between round 1 and round 2, where we were able to reach more people who have never applied, and this is really due to the hard work of Sarbani and Jessica, who did a boatload of outreach into the community to make sure people knew about these grants, because once the first round were announced, people heard about them, now they became available again. We wanted to make sure they had help with this. So 64% of the round 2 awardees were first-time grant applicants, had never written a grant before, ever, an increase of 17%. Let's keep going here. On the larger grants, so everybody applied for the maximum $25,000. There were a total of 9 applicants. We were able to fund 7 of the 9 in various amounts of the total amount of the request. We gave partial awards. We did find that almost all of them were nonprofits, just because they're more skilled. Nonprofit collaborations tend to take place naturally in the community. And then we had 14%, 1 of the 7 that was from a BIPOC lead applicant. As expected, as Deb said, there were no first-time grant applicants. In the impact, this was a more arduous grant application. All of our grant applications were quite arduous because of the government money. And then the purpose of the funds for impact was largely for, similar to the small project, with program events and projects being the primary purpose of the use of the funds, along with marketing promotion. So I'm not going to read them all to you, but these are our round 2. We just got the announcements out last week, but these are our round 2 awardees. They have been most notified, and so I'm not going to go through them all, but this is the breakdown you have, and you have the entire list in your packet. And it gives what the project was for, the total amount, the type of business that they are, and which grant they got. So some of the insights that we learned, one of the things on the impact grants, and even through Jessica and Sarbani's time, was they were required to talk to us before they applied. They had to have a conversation with us so we knew, could we help them partner? Could we help them talk to some other agencies? So maybe, was there duplication? Was there a void? Was there any information? But in the end, that technical support, and I know in the previous updates we've talked to you about the hand-holding that is necessary for grant applicants to really help them through the process of what it means to write a competitive grant application. These were competitive grant programs. A total of 136 hours between Jessica and Shabani to help applicants answer questions, provide a budget, talk them through it, do constructive reviews of their actual drafts and narratives. Sarbani and Jessica were not on the grant review committee, and so they were able to provide all that information without impacting how we were going to, in the end, score their sheets. It was a very siloed process. So they both said that those pre-meetings were really important to them and really important to the applicants. They got to go through guidelines, all the things that basically helped to mitigate the issues that would have occurred if they didn't have the help. Budgets that weren't properly formed, questions that didn't have answers that were according to the questions. So this was a significant amount of hand-holding again, and a great learning opportunity for all the applicants. This was Jessica, and you saw Sarbani's, but really what we're basically saying is this is the kind of work that is required to get grants into your community in order to not just apply for a grant. We will now help all of the first-time grant applicants that have been awarded a grant will now go into our funding booster program for free and now learn how to make sure they manage that grant and that funding well, and then be able to do a grant report. So we're going to take this kind of from cradle to grave and making sure that this money is invested and stewarded wisely, but also helping all these applicants and awardees become more proficient at applying for grants and managing grants and completing projects. We did extend the deadline for the impact grant when we realized that we required authentic collaboration and the organizations didn't have enough time to develop an authentic collaboration, so we extended it. Looking back now, our team kind of has said this could easily be a year-long process to allow authentic collaborations to take place. It can't be done really in 1 month, 3 months, 4 months. It does take a lot of time to kind of marinate those and come up with those. So we're learning lessons as we go through this as well. We offered events to help connect people so they could apply for grants together and collaborate. That was a successful part of our work. You have all the highlights, and like I said, highlights not based on grant reports, just initial grant reports from some of the first round awardees. And I just wanted to highlight a few. You have them all in your packet. Here was Castle Church, who got help with their mural, but the mural won the 2022 Award for All award by Connecticut chapter of the American Planning Association, which is a great thing for Norwich to have. Midnight Ether, who also had a grant in the first round, brought in new faces, local and outside to Norwich, to spend their money and helped retain their dedicated local regulars, also helping and providing service to young adults. Norwich Camera Company, probably, I think, one of our most successful first round grants in terms of how he used the money. Saw an average daily visit to our online shop more than triple after we started putting the money to use. The community found a new film home, went on. They're on track to double their sales in 2023. This is exactly the kind of thing we want to see in terms of investment in equipment, business expansion, and really kind of coming back from the pandemic even stronger. We did highlight also the Norwich Sunrise Rotary Group to celebrate diversity, and the mayor was there and provided a proclamation acknowledging that event, so we know that was a great success. So that's the first kind of chunk of information, which is where the bulk of the money has gone or is going to go. This next chunk is on the Norwich Public Art Committee. We formed this Public Art Committee knowing that the city technically doesn't really have any guidelines for approving public art. So any ARPA-funded project that we were in charge of, we wanted to actually have guidelines in a Public Art Committee and make it a little bit more official in terms of how these things were vetted. So this has been an ad hoc committee that's been working, we haven't met every month, but I think we've had about 4 or 5 meetings so far and done some great work. And so the mayor is on it, city councilors, the city, representatives, community members. So one of the good things that's done, and you'll see this in the packet, is kind of the value statement. It's just to set up kind of a vision statement of what we want the public art program to kind of be for the city, which is inclusive and diverse and all the good things that come along with thinking about history, heritage, modern art, relevant art, murals, sculptures, you name it. It could be music events. So it's a good first step. That document of the value statement has gone now to Deanna in the city so that when she reviews art, she has at least something there. I'm not sure if she has to use it, but we provided it to her as a way to look at guidelines of before she approves. If she wants to look at that, it's a tool she can use now. The next thing we have, and this is going up soon, hopefully this week or next, we're putting out the request for concepts for the Franklin Square roundabout. This has a budget of $35,000 attached to it, $25,000 for the project, $3,000 for the development of 3 RFPs from the top finalists, and then some wiggle room money for what we figure will be likely some unexpected expenditures as we develop the roundabout. for Franklin Square, so stay tuned for that. And then just a reminder that this ad hoc committee is really only working underneath the auspices of our organization with ARPA funds, and if it wants to be kind of subsumed by the city, it just needs to hopefully migrate someplace where it can have a home in one of the commissions or potentially a cultural district commission, which I'll get to. So the third a third leg of the stool in terms of a presentation and update is on this Norwich Cultural District. So in Eastern Connecticut now, we had New London that formed a cultural district about a year and a half ago. Stonington just formed 2 cultural districts in one resolution and is just now seating their commission. And then we have 4 or 5 other towns that are moving forward in exploring a cultural district commission. So the first step was for us to help co-host with the city, and thank you, Councilor Berta, for helping at least know that we had some communication on this. 3 community input sessions to find out what the community thought about whether or not there should be a cultural district. And so we hosted those, and in your packets are the number of people that came, kind of the outcomes and summaries of each meeting, what we kind of heard in terms of where it could be and what it should look like and what it could be used for. And so what we kind of walked away from was saying there is enough interest and people at the table to move forward with continuing to explore a cultural district and form one, which is good. So the recommendations that we kind of got out of this were that, yes, there should be a cultural district, that it would be a good thing to have one, that it should be rather larger than other towns in terms of what's being formed, rather than having multiple smaller cultural districts, that you would have one larger one that was still walkable in some ways, but be more inclusive, because silos probably would not be a good thing in terms of how this gets formed, and it's harder to manage those. So we talked about one larger cultural district that had downtown, Greenville, including Norwich Town, and we did the mileage, and it still kind of technically works. And the state is not too prescriptive about what walkable means, and so if it works for the city, it'll work for the state. They've been very supportive of us defining what walkable means and how we make that work. So we definitely see that there would be an improvement in efficiencies, communication, planning, coordination. You could think about how public art rolls into there, event coordination, marketing, promotion, tourism, all would get rolled into a cultural district, and keeping in mind that a cultural district is meant to be kind of the center of the wheel, not exclusive of things that are outside the cultural district, but all connected like the spokes on a wheel. So it's not meant to be exclusive. But the next steps in order for a cultural district to proceed would basically be bringing back the community members, which the Culture Coalition would do. We would help to organize bringing back all the people who attended the meetings, start to draw lines on a map of actually where the cultural district proposed could be, start to do an inventory of arts and cultural assets. That's everything from statues and sculptuary to murals and public art spaces where events take place. But you would then, the volunteers would actually be responsible for creating that inventory. And we have examples from the other cities and towns. A draft resolution to create the actual district. So the community would do the kind of heavy lifting of the mapping, of the inventory, and the kind of preparation. The resolution would then form it in language of we're creating a cultural district, but you also have to create a municipal structure. And this is where it comes back to the city to decide, there's 3 different ways of forming a cultural district. I'm going to pass out that piece of paper. You can form a whole new commission, you can assign it to an existing commission, or you can have an advisory committee to an existing commission. And so you have ways of creating this. But ultimately, that would be your job. We have the draft resolutions for all 3 ways of those, so we would provide you with a draft, and you would customize it to the Norwich language as like your charter. It would serve like any other commission in terms of appointments and anything else you have along with government structures. And we would help to find the people who are in this community part to serve on that commission or advisory committee. And then once that commission or advisory committee is formed by resolution and a vote from the city council, then that commission would be seated, and they would begin the process of applying to the state to become a formal designated cultural district. And that's a whole different process for that committee. But that's where we are, is we just kind of need to know, do we keep going? What do you want us to do? How would you like to proceed? That's it for our updates for now. I know we'll probably come back, or somebody in my organization will be back in the fall or winter to give you another update as to where we are. And then we'll kind of keep going from there, but I appreciate your time, and I will answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Very concise. Members, questions? Alderwoman Gould.
Hi, Wendy. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
A couple of questions, and you may or may not have the answers at your fingertips, but you had on page 11, there was a $10,000 grant awarded for multi-panel, multicultural, permanent public art installed at Otis Library.
On page 11?
I'm sorry, 12.
Okay.
12, I'm sorry.
Yes, Lavanya Schuberger, the artist.
Right? So
Yep.
has that work been done?
No, so they just got their grant notification last week, which means, so all of the grant applications had to work within a time frame of, I think it was May or June is what we said the start date was, to the end of the calendar year. So their projects all are going to take place before the end of this calendar year. But they didn't get the award notification until last week.
Okay. All right.
So hopefully they didn't do it without knowing if they got the grant or not.
Okay, so all of these, like on page 14, there was $20,000 for the Greenville Playground and storm drains on Central Avenue.
Right. So all of them will begin their work, and all of the applications, they give us the scope of work, who the partners are, when they, the rough timeline, the budget for everything. So now that they have the award announcement and the firm decision, most of them will probably wait for us to actually cut the checks. Then they can begin their work, and they have until the end of the year to complete these projects. And we have broader, longer descriptions of each one, probably 2 or 3 pages worth of descriptions. So we've really summarized in terms of like the project and title, but we can provide like a paragraph of more about each of these projects if you'd like them.
Okay, so where the round 1 grants,
So if you look at the same table that you were just looking at, and you look at page 16, you see the top one is an impact grant, that's this round, and everything beneath that, starting with Arts by Tauntaun, those are all the first round grants from there on page 16 and 17. So they received their money a while back. Most of them implemented their projects by the end of the calendar year, I believe, was the deadline for implementation. So they had to complete their projects by the end, and then their grant report is due June 30th.
okay, and you have a list of, how many, what they did for programming, or
Yeah.
how many activities they put on for, like this one, for geek or pop culture.
Yeah, so we won't get the full grant reports until June 30th is the deadline to complete them. However, those applicants who were applying as part of the second round, if they were a first round awardee, they had to complete the grant report beforehand so that we had all of the information ahead of time. So for some of these applicants, not everybody applied again for the second round as a partner or anything else, but if they did apply as a partner or individually for a different project, they did complete that project, and we would have all that information. But for those who've not submitted it yet, we don't have all the fine details around exact dollar amount, budget to actual, exactly how many events, how many people. We asked them to collect a lot of data as well.
Okay. So when will we be provided with that information?
Yeah, so if it's due by June 30th for everybody, then I would say give us a few months to go through and prepare and do the exact same thing. Let Deb do her magic on the analysis of it, run the numbers for impact. We've also talked about how we could kind of pull together some sort of an economic impact reports that would show the broader actual spread if possible, but we'll have direct reports, like I said, fall or winter. Within a few months, we should be able to pull together the first round impact results from the grant reports. So fall.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Other members, questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm going to pass out one more
Sure,
thing.
certainly.
These are this is the checklist for the cultural district, just so that you all are aware, I'm going to take one, of the process. Keeping in mind that it's 2 phases. One is forming a municipal cultural district that you all do as a form of government, and the second phase is applying for state designation, which is a whole different application. But I wanted to make sure that we spelled out for you what the city's responsibility would be in order to pass that resolution to legally form the cultural district, and then once it is formed, that committee goes and does a lot more work to apply for state designation. So I just want to make sure you had that information. Thank you. And I didn't know if either the mayor or the city manager wanted to update on the second $500,000, the second $500,000.
If you could share that briefly, thank you.
Sure. As you know, when the second allocation that was approved in January of this year for another $500,000, the biggest chunk of that for $250,000 is a partnership with NCDC to kind of add value to any of their economic and community development projects by adding in artistic elements such as parklets with more cool stuff, streetscapes, anything else that they thought was a priority in their projects. We became aware that there was a higher and broader need in the community in Norwich for some of the money, and so we have made the decision that we would kind of return $250,000 back to the city in order to use it for this higher and broader, and what it sounds to be like a broader benefit to the city in order to let that happen, and the $250,000 would stay with our partnership with NCDC.
Thank you. Members, any discussion needed? No? Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And best of luck.
Thanks. Oh yeah, thank you. I probably will not be here for the next update. I will be transitioning out of this job by the end of May. May 31st is my last day in this position. Our successor has not been named yet. The search committee is working very hard, and there will be enough time now for kind of a direct handoff from my position to the successor, so I'm looking forward to kind of doing that handoff, which is why I stayed for a 3.5-month transition. But so you'll be hearing from my successor, but it has been an absolute pleasure and honor to work for the City of Norwich and be a partner. John, I especially thank you for entrusting our organization to be a partner with the city and the mayor and everybody else for filling us. But I am grateful to you all for being a part of this, and congratulations to the city for being a real trailblazer in this way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.